Ingeborg of Norway, was a Norwegian and by marriage Swedish princess and royal duchess with a position in the Regency governments in Norway and Sweden. In 1318 to 1319 she was Sweden's first de facto female ruler, and her position subsequently equaled that of an undeclared queen mother for over 40 years. In 1319 to 1326, she was Sweden's first de jure female regent. Background: Ingeborg was born as the only legitimate daughter of King Haakon V of Norway from his marriage with Euphemia of Rügen. As a child, she was first betrothed to Magnus Birgersson, the son and designated heir of King Birger I of Sweden. Soon afterwards the engagement was however broken for altered political reasons, and in 1305 she was betrothed to Erik, Duke of Södermanland, a younger brother of King Birger of Sweden, thus uncle of her first betrothed. In 1312, Ingeborg and Erik were formally married in a double wedding in Oslo. At the same time, her cousin Ingeborg Eriksdottir of Norway married Erik's brother Duke Valdemar Magnusson. At her wedding, her mother Queen Euphemia had published the recently translated famous poems, the Euphemia Songs. The couple had 2 children before Duke Erik was murdered. Leader of the ducal party. Upon the imprisonment of her spouse and her brother-in-law, she and her cousin and sister-in-law, Ingeborg Eriksdottir, became the leaders of the spouse's followers. On the 16th of April 1318, the 2 duchesses Ingeborg made a treaty in Kalmar with the Danish Duke Christopher of Halland Samsa and Archbishop Eskar of Lund to free their husbands and not to make peace with the kings of Sweden and Denmark before they agreed to this, and the 2 duchesses promised to honor the promises they gave in return in the names of the husbands. Later the same year, the husbands were confirmed to have died. Regency. Her son Magnus VII of Norway, at the age of 3, was proclaimed King of Norway upon her father's death, in rights devolved from her. Ingeborg was recognized as formal regent of her son in Norway. Soon, the Swedish nobility elected young Magnus King of Sweden after deposing Birger, and Ingeborg was made nominal regent of Sweden and given a seat and vote in the Swedish government and the title, Ingeborg, by the grace of God, daughter of Haakon, Duchess in the Kingdom of Sweden. Duchess Ingeborg held her own court at her residence in Varberg. The exact position of Ingeborg in the Regency Council is hard to define properly due to the documentation. Mats Ketelumsson, her ally, presided over the Swedish Regency Council alongside the 2 duchesses Ingeborg Håkansdotter and her cousin and sister-in-law Ingeborg Eriksdottir. Magnus, already King of Norway, was elected King of Sweden with the approval of the Norwegian Council in her presence. Ingeborg was the only one with a seat in both the Swedish and the Norwegian minor regency and Council of State. She was the independent reigning duchess of her own fiefs, which were autonomous under her rule, and a large number of castles which controlled big areas thanks to the strategic positions. Favorites. She was criticized for her way of conducting her own politics without the counsel of the Swedish and Norwegian councils, and for using the royal seal of her son for her own wishes. The 1st of October 1320, she liberated Riga from its debts in her name on behalf of her son. She was known to make large donations to her supporters. Knut Pors had been one of the supporters of her spouse and was appointed governor of Varberg. Ingeborg surrounded herself with young foreign men, thought to affect her politics, of which Knut was the most known. The 12th of April 1321, the Swedish Council, after receiving complaints from the Norwegian Council regarding a rumor of crimes and disturbances in Ingeborg's lands made by foreigners, told the Norwegian Council to advise Ingeborg to listen more to the advice of the old experienced experienced men in the councils rather than to young, unexperienced foreign men. A law was created which banned foreigners in the Swedish council. The Scania affair. Ingeborg and Knut had the ambition to make the then Danish Scania a part of her possessions. In 1321, Ingeborg arranged a marriage with her daughter Euphemia and Albert II, Duke of Mecklenburg. The marriage was arranged with the terms that Mecklenburg, Saxony, Holstein, Rendsburg and Schleswig would assist Ingeborg in the conquest of Scania. This was approved by the Council of Norway but not Sweden. To finance the invasion, Ingeborg took a loan from Stralsund with free trade in Sweden and Norway as security. When Ingeborg's forces under command of Knut invaded Scania in 1322–23, Mecklenburg betrayed her to Denmark and the alliance was broken. Conflict with the councils and diminished power. In 1322, open conflict broke out between Ingeborg and the Swedish Regency Council. The Council of State made an agreement that no order from Ingeborg should hereby be accepted without the approval from the entire council, and all agreements made with her by individual councillors was hereby annulled. In 1323, Ingeborg was forced to accept the terms and give up several of her strategical castles and fiefs. The 20th of February 1323, also the Norwegian Regency Council rebelled against Ingeborg. She was accused of misusing the royal seal, to have broken the peace with Denmark and for greater costs, and was replaced as head of the Regency. After 1323, Ingeborg's power was limited to what was approved by votes in the councils, which in practice had deposed her. The 14th of February 1326, in exchange for having her debts paid, Ingeborg gave up several fiefs and was forced to send Knut into exile and was stripped from all political authority in the Swedish Regency Council. In the Norwegian Regency Council, however, her signature was still needed in the peace treaty between Norway and Sweden on the 14th of June 1327. Ingeborg married her lover Knut Pors, a noble from less than royal circles, in 1327, while Knut was allowed to become Duke of Halland and holder of Ingeborg's inherited estates. Her marriage was another reason why Swedes, and also increasingly Norwegians, did not allow Ingeborg to use her governmental power in these kingdoms. The year of her marriage, Ingeborg was stripped from her power also in the Norwegian Regency Council. Later life, her husband was made Duke of Estonia in 1329. In 1330, she became a widow. Her younger sons became Dukes of Halland. Her eldest son became an adult in 1332, and the same year, Ingeborg secured the Swedish superiority over Scania. After the death of her second husband, Ingeborg again took an important position in the life of her son the king, but it is not known how much influence she had on him. In 1336, Ingeborg welcomed her daughter Euphemia and her son-in-law Albert of Mecklenburg, Rudolf of Saxony and Henry of Holstein with her own fleet to the coronation of her son and daughter-in-law in Stockholm. In 1341, Ingeborg and the Counts Henry and Claus of Holstein went to war against Valdemar of Schleswig, John of Holstein and the Hanseatic League in Denmark. Not much is known of this conflict, but King Magnus sealed the peace by telling Valdemar to keep the promise he had made to Ingeborg in the peace treaty. In 1350, she inherited the title and position of Duke of Halland from her younger son. The controversy around Ingeborg's second marriage and the potential succession of her son Håkon to the Norwegian throne are an important part of the plot of the novel Kristen Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset. Children and family. First marriage with Erik of Sweden, Duke of Södermanland, Magnus VII of Norway, Euphemia of Sweden, Duchess of Mecklenburg. Second marriage with Knut Pors, Duke of Halland and Estonia. Håkon, Duke of Halland, died 1350. Canute, Duke of Halland, died 1350. Birgitta married John Hafthorson and had issue. Ancestry. Succession.